Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Ross Garner. Coach Garner is a strength and conditioning coordinator at Cleburne High School. Prior to that, he was the assistant athletic director, director of strength and conditioning at Southwest Florida Christian Academy. He was also the assistant strength and conditioning coach of club sports at Liberty University, and he has spent his career coaching between the high school and collegiate levels, working with a variety of sports. He started Garner Performance and has a podcast, Victory Over Self Radio. Coach Garner is CSCS certified and a member of the National High School Strength Coaches Association. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Appreciate you, Coach, man. I'm fired up to be here.
I was glad to have you on. I know you guys got some weather down there. How is it?
I tell you what, because we just moved from Florida here, and it was -2 this morning on the field, which is nothing like what you got going on right now. But we got a little bit of snow this morning, but it's cleared off this afternoon, man. But I don't mind the cold, so it's been all right.
Well, good deal. And I know you had the day off today, so that makes it nice. You got a little bit of weather, but you don't have to get out no more than you have to.
Mm-hmm. Just drank a bunch of coffee today, man. That's it.
So we had kind of texted back and forth leading up to this thing, and you have a lot of really cool stuff out there and some ideas on some stuff. So I know one thing we had touched on a little bit was a 5-3-1. Now you're in a very, very large room. How do you get a 5-3-1 set up in such a large room?
When we get a real big groups down here in Texas at our school, I'm at a 5A school, and we run 2 athletic periods, and then we have before and after school lifting. And so our biggest groups are always our in-season groups. They typically go Monday, Wednesdays, because their games are Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, something like that. And so we get in situations where we're running, 115 kids plus at a time. And so when we roll out 5-3-1, because I just started rolling it out because we've been here for 6 months, so since July, and we've done it a couple times in the fall just to kind of show them, hey, this is how it works. I rolled it out in December a little bit so we could start going in the spring here with the groups. Well, I guess you should go back. I don't start rolling out 5-3-1 with these kids personally until I can get sheets on them. Before that, what we were doing is just, hey, we're going for a heavy 5 today, heavy 3, heavy, heavy-ish single, whatever. Not a true max, but we kind of roll it out that way. And then, depending on the day, what day of the week and whatnot, hey, earlier in the week, we're going heavier. Later in the week, we're going a little bit lighter. And they kind of get used to that of the ebb and flow of the week. And then once we roll a 5-3-1 and I've got the sheets going a true 5-3-1, we will go 1 week, obviously 1 week 5, 1 week 3, 1 week 1. But on the 5 week, there's also a 3 going and also a 1. So like let's say it's squat is 5. For me, deadlift would be the 1 that week. And then your bench would be your 3. And then we just rotate them around. And so when we're rolling it out here, again, I've got to have numbers on the kids. I'm big on getting some sort of numbers. I know some coaches don't mind or don't want it, when they do that. But to me, man, I think it's huge on the tracking piece of showing this is where you started. Here's where we're going. I need to at least get you in a ballpark of a number to put you for those 5 rep, 5+ sets, 3+ sets, 1. Because the perfect example is when I rolled out their first week of 5-3-1 on our 5+ set. I was having kids. They were hitting 8, 9. I'm like, okay, that's not what we want right now. I need you at least. I'm shooting for 12 plus. At least that's kind of what I'm looking for week 1. And so, okay, I got to adjust their maxes and do what we can. And so as they come back and as we go, okay, we're dialing the maxes that first month, and then we're going to roll it out, like I said, here in January. And when we're in season, when we're doing this in season, I'm a little more stringent on those sets. How I typically do that is it's not necessarily a true 5-3-1, but I typically do a 3 to 4 week linear buildup with each week being at a 90% relative intensity. So for example, for a 4-week cycle, we might go 75, 80, 85. And then we're going to go, the 4th week will be a plus set at 90%. And depending on what they get, I'll adjust their max. Just then, that's strictly for in season. And then when we do that linear build up, I do typically run everything up to 90% together. We just won't take the deadlift on a plus set. I'll take the squat on a plus set, and I'll take the bench on a plus set, and I'll just let them pull something heavy on the deadlift when it comes in season. But we'll do the plus sets on the deadlift in the off season though. I don't really know if I explained how I rolled that out very well, but there you go.
Well, I think you did, and I know it can be confusing, but listening to you talk about it, it's bumping Brandon Lilly's cube method really closely.
Yeah. And, I know of it, and I've never actually dove into that. So I couldn't tell you whether or not I'm bumped up to it or not, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, and I've kind of come to some of these ideas too. When you take a 5-week, a 3-week, and a 1 week, you get some of the cube, and then he would have a deload in there, and then,
right.
But the idea is awesome, because at no point are you taking one lift or multiple lifts to one. You've always,
right.
You're always backing that back through.
Yeah. And I think the thing about that too, and I've been on this recently the past couple of weeks, just thinking wise, is you more than likely come to that conclusion, I think, is if you have personally ever run 5-3-1, like on you, because if you've ran them all, we're doing everything 5, everything 3, everything 1, you're pretty, I don't want to say you're beat up, but it's pretty taxing, obviously, on that 1 week. And I think it's so huge. Obviously, we know that coaches need to train, and they should lift, and they should feel the stuff out. But I think that's how you get to that situation. And that's also when you get different coaches in the program, and you start seeing some of this, I'm going to call not the best programming potentially, whether it's volume or just how you line stuff up. It's like, man, you've actually never done that, and you've never felt what that feels like. And especially as you get older, it's like, well, 10 years ago I did this and I was fine. I was like, well, at 22 I might have been okay, but at 32 I'm probably going to blow out a pec. And so, you adjust those things, and that's where you got to it. And at the end of the day too, it's all about on-field performance, and that's typically what's going to give us that. And in the off season, when it's go week, man, I'm going to let you know this is squat week, and this is bench week, and this is deadlift week. And the kids, they know what's coming down the pipe for what the heavy is. So that way it checks the box mentally, I think, with high school kids of when are we going heavy? When do I get to go heavy? And that gives them that 1 day a week. They know this is the week for that, and they get to chase it.
The other thing it would allow you to do is stack. So you could open up your days a little bit. So you could put the deadlift and the squat on the same day, because you're using one as a main lift, you're using the other as an accessory. Mm-hmm. You could do that the same with the overhead press or a variation thereof in the bench. Then they would flip-flop also. And then that would open you up if you wanted to do explosive work or dynamic work or sprint work. Well, then your liftings, you've adjusted it to fit your needs. Because the next question I would have is, how big is too big of a room?
Man, that's a great question. I think that every day when I have 120 kids in there and I'm trying to have a high quality session, when you get to so we have 28 racks. We have 28 stations in our weight room, and our weight room is roughly 50 by 125 long. And so it's a great space. I mean, it's a top 1% in the country type of space, in my opinion. And so I think there's a sweet spot I think the number to me is like 50 or 60 kids. You can realistically go around the room and still coach and control the flow. When you get to 100 plus 120, and you get to those wild high numbers, one, you can't do it by yourself. You got to have other coaches in there, which we do. Our coaches come in and they help. The thing about that is now I turn into a logistics manager and not a coach. I can't go and be at this one rack for 2, 3, 4 minutes and really coach this group, this group of 4 kids and whatever we're doing, because I got 50 other ones that are slamming down on a box squat or not pushing their, you know what I mean? And I got to just go by real quick hitters and keep going, because you just have to. And I think there's the part of my job that I've got to get way better at here is that I've got to get way better at taking the time to educate our coaches and like our coaches are doing great and they're helping and they're doing what they can. And I think I need to be way better at saying, hey, look, I need you to go coach. I'm not going to be mad if you go up to a kid and tell them something. If it's not perfect, it's not perfect. But man, at least we're trying to get it right and do what we can. But again, I do think that sweet spot is 50-60. And because I always write programs as if I have no help. And it doesn't matter that I know that I got 6 coaches coming. I'm still going to write it like it's just going to end up being me in there, and we gotta go. And that typically helps a lot. If you're banking on having 6 coaches but only 2 come, that's going to be a bad day. So again, 50-60 is your sweet spot. I think 75 at most, and that's only because you get football teams, where you're getting 75 kids at once. But again, that 50-60 and our baseball team, and only came to that opinion because our baseball team will come in by themselves, and you'll get groups of they'll be under 50, but those guys are dialed in and they're coachable and they listen. And if you got a great group, then you can run 50 dudes and have a great session. But again, when it gets to those triple digits, you're just a logistics manager over detailed coaching.
And that's, as you've been talking, I've been writing questions down. That way I don't lose track of where I am. So I guess that kind of answers the question that I was going to ask is who gets the majority of your attention? The guys that are doing really good or the guys that are doing really poor. But if you're a logistics manager, now you're relying on the other coaches in the room to kind of help fill that in.
Yeah. So I think and again, this is something, man, we're I'm 6-7 months into this, and your first year at any program, this is the 3rd time I'm doing this. Your first year, you are just establishing what you can. It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to have everything dialed in. And especially the first 6 months, you're going to, we have done probably 4 different workout layouts in order to see what's working good. And we're currently on our 5th, and it's doing okay. And the thing that I think when you're getting to these big giant groups is that you need to teach, because what's very easy to happen is that your coaches will hang out with their team, as they should. It's their team. Yes, you need to go over there and coach your guys. But if I have my football team has 10, let's say we have 10 football coaches come, okay, and they got 60 dudes in the room. That's a great ratio of coaches. But I also think you can get to the point of, because there's so many coaches, there's guys that aren't going to coach as hard because like, oh, we got 10 other dudes around, I don't need to maybe coach as much. Where if you can I got a room of, say, football, baseball, basketball, then I get those coaches, hey man, just walk around the room and coach all the kids. It doesn't matter, hey, I need you here over, at this station, and we got multiple kids here, different sports. Just coach everybody. And at the end of the day, that's going to be huge for, as we know, relationship building, whether or not they play football or not. You got guys that, hey, they never played football and they'll come play football now because they know you, or, whatever it may be. I think that's where we need to get, and we're not there. Not at our coach's fault, but purely from what I'm doing. And I haven't explained it or kind of what we want it to look like. But I think being able to do that all of a sudden raises the standard of the room, because everybody is involved with setting that standard in the room versus, hey, I'm only worried about my softball team. I don't care what track's doing, and I don't care what football's doing. Well, I can tell you right now from looking at a room of 120 kids that if we are that way, then the standards in the room are so up and down that your team is getting taken away from because the team across the rack from you is messing around. So you're not getting as good as the workout that you could have, if it was by yourself. And the coaches are seeing too, I think, when there's everybody at this point has had an opportunity to be in the big group and to be in the smaller groups. And they see how different I am in the big groups and the smaller groups. Because in the big groups, man, I am stressed and I am going around and I am just flying. Where when it's a small groups, I can be more detailed. It's just a different coaching style at the end of the day. And so I think when they see that, it's like, okay, I want to be in a smaller group, and we're going to figure that stuff out as we go forward. But nevertheless, it's going to take everybody to make it a higher standard than what we got.
You said you had 28 racks. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir. It's 14 double-sided racks.
Okay. So with 120 kids, you're running 4 kids to a rack, essentially.
Minimum, yeah. Yeah.
How do you decide how to group that? You group it on size or weight, or
yeah.
I mean, I think that'd be difficult to do, to get every rack close where you're not changing pins, you're not pulling mats.
Yeah.
How do you establish that?
So one side of the rack is always set up as lower body. One side of the rack is always set up as upper body. I generally group them by their team. And it's what we do for now, because the schedule always changes with us. It's like, okay, this semester you're going on Monday, Wednesdays, but then next semester you're going to go Tuesday, Thursday, or your season starts. Now you got to shift to Monday, Wednesday. So I can't group them by the kids, like just the kids. And that way I do have to do it by the sport, but that does make it a little easier to where, okay, I know that all of track will fit on the lower body side of this rack. And I know all of baseball will fit on this side of the rack. And then football has to take the whole other side of the room, and then we can flip them. Because generally how we have it right now is I have 3 stations, a total body power station, a upper station, lower station. That's essentially what it breaks down to. And so if with the really big groups, it's the racks are filled up, and then I have an extra space that I have plyo boxes, reverse hypers, more dumbbells and benches, and then our broad jump lines. And so that just again becomes like our power station, and then we just kind of rotate. I do them on a roughly on a clock. It's like 12 to 15 minutes with some turnovers. Some teams I do turnovers with, others I don't, just solely based off of being teams that can handle it, and or otherwise there's other times I don't need the turnovers because it takes so long to get to the next kid that I need you to just go. Otherwise you'd be slow. And so nevertheless, we're working through that, but that's typically how I break it up, again, by teams. And then it's the 3 stations in the room.
So you pretty much got a Rubik's Cube in there.
Yes. It's and the nice part is we do go through phase. We're not doing it right now, but there are times of the year where we'll have the groups of the racks, and then there's a group, our indoor. We have an indoor. It is right outside our weight room doors. Now I'm not connected to the indoor. There's a sidewalk, but it's right across the way. And so, a station will be in there getting their sprints in, and jumps and med balls and whatever. And then they'll rotate. And that's where we're time sprints and things like that. So it depends on the day, but we have that as well.
Now, you talked about in your 5-3-1 incorporating the deadlift. Are you, with that many kids, are you trap bar only, or do you bar deadlift?
Both. We do both. So I start, whenever I come in, we will do RDLs till they can't mess up an RDL forever. And I'm big on heavy RDLs. I like a good heavy RDL. Not going typically below 5s. The only reason the kid is getting below 5s is because we went heavy and their grip couldn't get to 5. It wasn't planned. And so we're typically running 5, 6s there. And then, we'll rotate through. And I just started doing this because Fahey I talked to him about this, and I've loved it. We will rotate trap bar. We'll then rotate the 2-block deadlift, and then we'll rotate to the floor, and then we'll go back to trap bar. And then we'll rotate RDL, and then we'll go back to trap bar. I've debated on going trap bar, RDL for a week, 2-block, RDL for a week, floor, just to keep a heavy RDL in there and give them a little break too. But nevertheless, we'll rotate through those 4 things for the deadlift days. Now,
let me ask you this: what are the benefits to a trap bar over a pin press?
Over a pin press?
Yeah, if you a pin press with the squat.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so for me, I like the trap bar. One, I think most kids can. Well, we're gonna get grip, we're gonna get upper back, we're gonna get all those things. I think I truthfully very rarely use a pin squat with our kids when it comes to that. Not because I'm against it, I just don't. quite frankly, I don't want to set it up because I don't trust all our kids to be able to do it right, where it's really hard to mess up the trap bar, or I think it's hard to mess up any deadlift, but I think it's way harder to do that than say throw on the pin squat and try to get them underneath and get them set. Now, older guys that love lifting, sure, you know what I mean? Like they can do that and they'll be totally fine. But I think purely from the upper back development and the grip that none of these kids have. They don't have upper backs. They don't have any grip. And the kids because I don't let these kids mix grip. They can only go double overhand. The only time they can mix grip is if they join the powerlifting team, they can go mix grip. I said, but until then, we're going to go double overhand and we're just going to get the grip dialed in because, these kids will freaking try to mix grip with 95 pounds on the bar. I'm like, dude, if you can't pick up that weight, that's our problem. Now, when you get to these big old numbers, okay, we can talk about let's put on a mixed grip and let's go, but you're going to take a long time to get there. And again, because of that upper back development, I want to do that. And that's also why I love the RDL and because of the grip. But again, I think purely just simply setting up that pin squat is why I don't do it because of the sheer numbers at the end of the day.
Talking about developing the upper back, do you do a lot of snatch grip deadlifts?
Haven't used them yet, but we have done so far here. We have done snatch RDLs, snatch grip RDLs. We'll vary the grip on the RDLs. If we're doing the snatch grip on the RDL, I don't want to assign a weight. It's just, hey, get to a heavy 5 or 6, whatever it is. We'll do that on I will do a little bit of snatch high pulls, things like that sometimes. But I haven't introduced the deadlift yet. When I was at Liberty under Coach Gillespie, they did those all the time. They'd go from the floor and then they would stand on a 1-inch pad. Another week, they'd go a couple weeks from the floor, a couple weeks off of a deficit, and then they go a 2-inch deficit and just do sets of 6 and blow it up. But we haven't got to that point yet. But I think it's mostly from I haven't felt I've needed it to bring it in yet. You know what I mean? I don't think I've needed it yet, but it's definitely going to be something in the future of when I feel that they can't mess up the form of it, we'll throw it in there. Because as you know, and we know as coaches, the 2 main ways we're going to fail a lift is either I straight up can't pick it up or it's a technical failure. And with our kids in our program, the majority of them, they're going to fail because of technique, not because they can't pick it up. And if I can trust you, and this is where the ebb and flow of coaching and the right number of kids, like in Florida, I had kids in my classes. And so you're looking at 20 kids in a group. So, and I laugh now thinking about how unbelievably easy that was from a organization and coaching standpoint. But there was kids in the class who'd be like, "Hey, coach, I feel like I can do this weight." Okay, go. And I wouldn't watch them, and I'd go to somebody else and they'd say, "Yeah, I got it," or "I didn't get it." And great. And then we just talk through it. But we're not at that point yet. And once we get there, that's when I don't have a problem throwing in like a snatch deadlift, because that can just go south quick, depending on who they are. But once there's certain movements where when I can trust the kids, we'll put them in there for sure.
It's funny you talked about technical failure, man. I've had some of the biggest arguments with kids over technical failure. They're like, "Well, I got the lift." Yes, you got the lift, but you hitched it on your thigh. You didn't. Did you really get it though? They just don't quite understand it. So yeah, you gotta have a kid that understands what you're looking for and like, hey, cut it off.
Yeah, and actually, your older kids understand that. You know what I mean? Your older guys get it, and girls get it. The younger kids don't quite get it, so in this job I work directly with 7th through 12th grade, and then our 6th grade does technically get training. I don't get to go over there. We have another guy that does that, but currently in 7th, 8th grade, they're learning, and they're in the second semester for our 8th grade, and I'm letting them go. This whole fall semester, they have just been doing movement, competency, and figuring it. They've never had this, so they don't know. And so I've got groups. We've basically put them into 2 groups. I've got a group that's ready and not ready yet, and they're still learning. And that really the only difference is generally they're doing the same stuff. It ends up just being the weight. Like, hey, this older group or this group that's ready, hey, you can't go past 135 today, or whatever it may be. But yeah, that technical piece is where when the kids learn the technical piece, that's when I start having fun. And I don't. We're close. We're definitely close. We're not quite there yet. So I haven't done the full unleash yet of, hey, if you feel great, man, go and don't come get me. But now my general rule is like, man, if you think this weight today is wrong, and this is the easiest thing you ever done in your life, come get me. Otherwise, it's like, just go do it and then tell me after.
And then to build onto that, it's great when you start watching them coach each other, and they're actually actually sincere about it, and they're just as happy a kid hit a PR as anybody in the room.
Yeah, and they yes, because they start to, because we'll do, we do 5-3-1, we'll use APRE stuff, and it takes them a really long time to realize, like on the APRE stuff, that if you go past that middle number, that means your max has gone up. Like it doesn't process, I don't think, for a really long time. And so you start getting the guys of like, if it's 2 to 6, like, you're getting 5 and 6, come on, they're getting amped up for it. And so no, yeah, like you're saying, man, when they start coaching them and they get it. And the thing that I get, there was what I was going to mention on the technical piece is because we have powerlifting here and it's geared, it's all geared. And so there, I've run into a little bit of, well, powerlifting, I got 315 on the back squat. I'm like, yeah, but you had on a suit, and they're failing on whatever it is on a squat. I'm like, well, it doesn't, this is not the same. And you got to teach them, they got to teach them that. They forget how much weight they get from the suit versus shirts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I bought a pair of briefs just to try out, and they were too small for me, so I'm gonna have to order another pair. But I let some guys wear them today, and they're like, holy cow, the boost you get out of the bottom is incredible. Yep,
for sure. And especially especially our female powerlifters, it's really interesting to see them, what they're doing raw. And I don't coach powerlifting. We've got 2 other guys that do it, and I'm just around. But they've got a meet this week, their first meet of the year. And so last week they were just hitting some openers, seeing how they felt. And there was a couple of the girls, I'm like, I did not think you could do that. They were like, when they got the suit on, it's like, that looked great. But if you would have told me that that's what they were trying to hit, I never would have thought that. So it was good. It was solid.
Now, one last thing on the deadlift. Are you conventional or sumo, or do you rotate them?
We'll rotate. We haven't done sumo here yet. I'm sure every single coach at Cleburne that works in powerlifting is going to tell me, Ross, we don't sumo. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to sumo eventually, just so you know. And because I got some guys that have pretty strong opinions on that. And I'm of the opinion of whatever you can pull the most of, just go ahead and do that. But we'll rotate them in for the kids. And that's where, like, going from trap bar to the 2 block to the floor, if I feel that the sumo is going to be the thing that they need, that's what they need, right? Yeah, we'll put that in there. We haven't got to the point of needing to bring that in yet, I don't think, personally, because we're box squatting and we're doing all that. So I think we're checking a lot of boxes there. But nevertheless, no, I'll rotate them in once we get rolling.
I wasn't sure, and you're going to get multiple opinions on that.
Yeah.
Sumo for what it does for the hips, and it seems like it's so easy to teach. Some guys just are adamant it's cheating. Well, you still have to build those muscles. You know what I mean? It's not like you can just walk in and sumo this huge amount of weight.
For sure. And I think
muscles.
Yeah, and I think like you said, being able to get in the position for sumo and the hip mobility and all that kind of stuff you need to get down there. I think that, and if you really think about it, your sumo is going to be closer to what you're hitting on box squat a little bit, because your chest's going to be a little higher compared to a conventional for most kids. But being able to get the kids down in the hole, I mean, I think when the kids figure that out on the sumo, that's what's like, oh, okay. And again, it just works different things. So it's going to be useful for sure.
And it seems to me, and I've heard other guys talk about it, there is a carryover from wide to narrow, but there's not a carryover from narrow to wide.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no doubt, because naturally wider glutes, we know that, if the underlying problem for and this is why RDL so much is I don't want the low back and the glute, our glutes to be an issue, but mostly low back on top of the grip point. I don't want those two things to be the reason why you're not picking up the deadlift. And so that's why I hammer that so much.
Me and you've talked about this a little bit. Weights for conditioning, as opposed to just getting kids out and running them. I know Cal Dietz does a lot of this, but taking the weight room from not only being a strength developing room, but also a conditioning room at the same time. Do you set up a system like that?
Yeah. So I've rolled out with football now that we're in the early off season. I think the one of the greatest contributions that Cal and Van Dyke have brought to us is that conditioning piece in the weight room. And I think it doesn't get talked about much. You naturally talk about triphasic and all that kind of stuff and all your different band work and your peaking work and the speed work. We all talk about that a lot, and you don't really hear much about the conditioning side. And I think that probably happens because you've got a mixed bag of coaches that like programming, in a block, using block periodization, and you got a ton that want to use vertical integration, and if you do vertical integration, you might feel like, I don't want to do these conditioning methods because I want to do everything at once with emphasis. Okay, well, if you're emphasizing your aerobic development in that time, your conditioning at that time, obviously you can use these methods, but I don't think it gets talked about much in that circle just because Cal is a block guy. He likes, and I think that's why potentially it doesn't get talked about, but I could be wrong. But with the weight room stuff, so like, for example, with football here, the first 6 weeks of this off season, I'm hammering aerobic conditioning for them naturally. And so like right now we're using metabolic conditioning, which all that means is they're running. I currently have them at 5 minutes week 1. Second week is week 2, and we're going to build up a minute over these 6 weeks, starting it will end at 10. But all metabolic running is you're going to start by running. We start by running like 300 yards, just a jog, super light jog, steady pace. And then we're going to go 20 yards back and forth of karaoke, shuffle, power skips, backwards run, and then jog. And we just keep cycling through that. So the 300 yards start, the jog, get your heart rate up to like 110, 120 if you're in decent shape. And then by doing the skipping and the shuffles and the karaoke, now your heart rate's jumping to probably 150, give or take, something like that, 140. So you're not quite in that lactate zone, but you're flirting on the end of it. And so you're having to do the steady pace stuff, but you're going at a super slow pace, but because it's not just jogging, you're moving, you're doing all these movement, your heart rate shoots up. And so we're starting with that as our warm up, and we're training at 7:15 in the morning. So it's a great warm up. So we're going to do that. And then with our conditioning piece, we take 1 day a week where the sole focus is conditioning. So we have 3 days of normal lifting with the metabolic running. So there's technically still a conditioning component for the day. But on our Wednesday, we'll start with the running. Well, then all the weight room stuff is going to be either escalating density sets, EDT sets, where, okay, we're going to go 5-6 minutes. These two movements will go sets of 3 to 5 at 50%, as many rounds as you can get on these two things. We'll take 2-3 minutes in between. We'll go to the next station, 2 to 3 minutes in between, go to our third station. So we'll rotate in 3 stations, just like I talked about how we rotate through 3 stations. And I typically use that, honestly, when we come back from breaks. So like all of our teams did that when we came back from breaks. We took 50% and they're just going between, okay, we're going to bench and we're going to do dumbbell RDLs. And we're just going to hit these back and forth. And so they're getting a bunch of rounds. If you do something like bench and dumbbell RDLs, you're typically going to get, give or take, 10 rounds in 5 or 6 minutes, depending on how long you go. And so we're doing these movements that's not running. It's more specific. The running is a global response. All the lifting stuff is going to be specific to that muscle group, obviously. But all that matters is that my heart rate is elevated. That's, at the end of the day, that's what we're shooting for. And so we're able to do all of these lifting things, and the kids are able to push it there, and they're going to go, in my opinion, way harder on the lifting stuff than if we just went out and we jogged and we did 300s and we did tempos, and I'll use tempos and that stuff too. But the weight room side of it, I think it's a great way to put on volume, a great way to put on mass, and also secretly sneak in the conditioning side. The kids don't realize that it's conditioning. They're thinking we're just getting a sick pump, and they're amped up about it. They're like, okay, we're going to get all these pull-ups and all these squats or whatever. And so we'll do that. And then if I have time on that conditioning day, we'll finish with a body weight aerobic circuit, which same sort of idea. It's just, we're going, say 3 to 5 body weight movements for 3 to 5 reps for 10 minutes, as many rounds you can get. And I'll use that as a warm up too. I've used it for both that and a finisher. But by making that whole day a conditioning day, I'm checking a ton of boxes, because man, you just went for 75 minutes basically of long conditioning. But I didn't go tell them you got to go run for 75 minutes straight. We did our intervals. We got a ton of reps in. We snuck in a bunch of volume, because then on the next day for me, that's a Wednesday, and I see them Monday through Thursday. On Thursday, we hammer them. I mean, they get jacked up on Thursdays. So then when they come back Monday, they're good to go. But again, that lifting and the conditioning side, I think that's something that it's a great way to get conditioned. You still need to run them in a capacity that you have to, because it's such a huge response that the kids got to get better at. But we're also going to sprint, and we're also going to do all that stuff. So you're still going to get conditioned there as well. But again, that weight room stuff, man, is great. And then we'll progress from that aerobic side of it. Once we get past this block of the 6 weeks, we'll then progress to our lactate work. And that's going to end up being, instead of 6 minute, as many rounds as you can get for 50% at 3 reps, it's going to end up being 30 to 40-ish, 45-ish% on the bar for sets of 10. And they'll go as many rounds as they can there as well. And so they'll go sets of 10, they'll go 5-6 minutes. We'll either do it that way, or we'll go 30-second sets, and they'll go as many reps as they can get in 30 seconds with X amount of weight on the bar. We'll probably end up doing a little bit of both over that period. But I find that at least with the high school kids, the 10 rep sets are the form and all that stuff sticks a lot better than if I tell you to go 30 seconds, how many reps can you get? It takes them a little bit to get the weight right, because we're going for 30 seconds. I don't want you to pause at all. I want you to just go, and if you get to 25 seconds, you got to take a breath. That's okay. But I don't need you 15 seconds in, like I can't do any more reps. And so I typically like assigning that percentage and then just doing the 10 reps and just go as many rounds as you can back and forth versus 30-second sets. But I'll use both. They're both good. The 30-second sets, I typically will go with a body weight movement, just to not have to worry about selecting a weight. It might be lunges, could be some sort of goblet squat. Hey man, just get a freaking dumbbell and let's go, and stuff like that. And then conditioning wise, it's going to be the same thing of 30-second outputs, or it ends up being a like closed chain agility work, and we're going to go whatever these cones, and we're going to go really quick through them with a short rest. I mean, we know how that stuff works, so you can be as creative as you want. But within the weight room, again, 30-second sets, or the same EDT sets for 10 reps for 5-6 minutes versus a slightly heavier weight and less reps.
So you're looking for that hypertrophy on top of conditioning in that 10, 12 rep range for quite a few sets.
Yeah. And when you go to that lactate work and you get those 10 reps, you might get 6 rounds. You might get around a minute, maybe, but it all depends on the movement. Like if you do 10 reps of squats, it's probably going to take you 30 seconds, roughly 3 seconds a rep. On bench, you could count on a minimum of 10 seconds, probably 15 to 18, maybe 20 if it wasn't great. But then once we go from that, you're going to go to the 10-second sets, because now we're in the peaking. So we build it, same sort of block build up of aerobic to lactate to now the less than 10-second set stuff and your ATP work. And so now we're going to go, instead of a set rep range, we're going to go, how many reps can you get in 10 seconds, for this weight, whatever it is. And then we're going to do a bunch of rounds of that back and forth. I don't quite have I don't necessarily think like, okay, man, we're going to get 6 rounds of this 10-second set. I think that's more applicable to think about what sport are they and how many rounds, how many times do we need them to go repeat. We're not going to do 60 sets for 10 seconds because football can go 60 plays. You know what I mean? But it's going to be something along those lines. And then once the running conditioning wise, same thing. All running will be 10 seconds or less. That metabolic running gets brought back in, and we'll still start them out by that jog just to get the heart rate up a little bit. But now the cone work of say it's karaoke and shuffling, whatever, that turns to a sprint. It turns to a max effort deal versus a steady pace deal. And we'll go, all right, you're going to karaoke as fast as you can up and back. You're going to walk to this next cone. Then you're going to go shuffle. You're going to walk to this next cone. And then we're going to rest for a couple minutes once you get through one round. And we'll cycle through that for as many rounds with a certain amount of rest.
So you're kind of flirting with that explosive power side of the strength curve at the same time.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, when we get to that 10-second stuff, man, it's peaking. We're trying to maximize strength, maximize power, maximize speed. We'll touch the aerobic work just to keep it. We did this big build up at 6 weeks, and I'd rather take the longer time to build that up at the beginning versus, hey man, I just want to take 3 weeks and go to the next thing. I think our kids, as we all kind of know, their general GPP is atrocious. And so I think we have to take an extended time to build this stuff up. And we'll throw in, and during whether it's lactate phase or aerobic, doesn't matter what phase, like we're going to do sled pushes, we're going to do trap bar carries, we're going to do that stuff too. And again, because I think everybody needs more GPP. They just do. And I don't care what anybody says, they need a bigger base. And so we're going to touch on the aerobic every probably 4 weeks, 3 weeks maybe. We'll go through the 3-week lactate work, probably hit aerobic for that 1 week, and then we'll go to the 10-second stuff. And then basically by that time, so for football, for example, we're going to 6-week aerobic, we'll go 3-week lactate into spring break. And then when we come back from spring break, we're going to hit 1 week of aerobic just to get them back. And then we're going to go 3 weeks of the 10-second peaking cycle to then hit us right to spring football. And then when we go through spring football, they'll hit that, and I may throw in some aerobic stuff, but I mean, that's more of a recovery piece than anything, not a conditioning piece. And so I don't really worry about it during spring ball. And then once we come back to summer, you've got 6 weeks over summer. I'll end up going 2 weeks of aerobic, 2 weeks of lactate. That'll roughly take us in the 4th of July. And then you'll hit another 2 weeks of the peaking, or 3 weeks of the peaking there in June. So something along those lines. But yeah, that 10-second stuff is just for the peaking, get them ready to go. And I'll caveat all of that to say that we're still jumping and we're still sprinting and we're still doing max effort work and all that kind of stuff during all of this.
So once you have their VO2 max kind of where you want it, all you're really doing is leveraging your time. So if you can maintain VO2 max for 28 days, you're coming to it every 4th week, which puts you right about that time that you need to kind of touch on it. And then you go back to anaerobic power.
Yeah. And if you really think about it, they're still working aerobic in the weight room. Like I got a max effort and they're going to rest. And, if you're doing a circuit, you're still working aerobic. Doesn't matter how you do it. That weight room stuff becomes aerobic for 99% of our strength and power days. So you're still hitting it, in a different way. It'll just be, man, this is our emphasis for the week.
Now you touched on it in there, sled work. Sled work seems to be underutilized in a lot of situations. And I think a lot of it's probably the size of the weight room and the surface that you're pushing it on. But using a sled in your system, how often do you get to it?
At least once a week. When we're doing it, at least once a week. And I should also caveat, I'm going to say a lot of things, and if some of our coaches here, they'd be like, well, we don't do that. I'm like, well, we don't have 120 sleds. And so, depending on the team and whatnot, and a lot of, because of how football is, I get them by themselves a lot. They get to do a lot of this stuff, and our baseball team gets to do a lot of this stuff because I get them by themselves. Our baseball team comes 4 days a week. The only two teams that come and see me more than twice are baseball and football. And baseball was by the coach's choice. It's not because, I said you should come 4 days. He's like, we're going to come 4 days. I was like, okay, let's go. And so, nevertheless, they'll throw in the sled work. If it's like, for example, okay, let's say it's in season for football, we're still going to hit sled and trap arc carries. Mostly with our bigs and our mids. Our skill, maybe not, but they're still going to do some other stuff. But in season, man, they're going to, on Mondays, we're going to do sled pushes and we're going to do trap arc carries, and they're going to sprint some. Like for the bigs, for example, they might not do as much of the jumping. They're going to go out and they're going to do some of this, 10-yard sled push, 20-yard sled push, hit around a trap arc carry, and then you're going to come over and you're going to sprint. Something like that. Since we're in the off season, we'll start throwing in days on that conditioning day, for example, we're not hitting a sled or a trap arc carry right now, but we will when we get to lactate. That's where like the 30-second sets come, or the 10-second sets come. I don't really generally do it in the aerobic. Although I would love to find a way to figure out, hey man, instead of you guys coming into, let's say we all squatted on Monday, on Wednesday, Thursday, instead of the deadlift or the second squat, you're going to go out. This group is going to go out and hit sleds. You're going to backwards walk. You're going to heavy sled push or whatever. That's definitely something I'd love to think about putting in, just logistically and making it work. It's hard to do, but no, we'll hit them. And I think those heavy trap arc carries are something I love doing for the kids, and naturally the sleds as well. But you can't beat manufactured farm work. Like you just can't. You can't beat it, and the kids just don't. And in our population, we got a ton of kids that work, and they have to go work in the summer and that type of stuff. So they do understand what that's like. And so no, man, I think that stuff is our biggest bang for buck. Putting on muscle mass, getting the conditioning in. But again, we'll put a ton of that in the lactate work and a ton of that in the peaking phase.
Now, I got on Simply Faster and read a couple of your articles on jumping, and I really enjoyed those. Conjugate style jumping. How do you develop something like that?
So when I was in Florida, when I was at Liberty, different situation. You see them 2 days a week, and we had a really nice gym, nicer than a lot of colleges for club sports. And so we started measuring. We got some jump mats, and measuring jumps. We're doing, we're trying to do strength deficit and all that stuff with jump mats, and figure out, is this kid strength driven or tendon driven and all that kind of stuff. And we're doing it, and I'm jumping kids every week, and jumps got better, but it wasn't dramatic. Like it wasn't great. And I'm like, we jumped every week, and this was terrible. In all things considered, I'm like, this isn't something I'm going to call home about, man, this kid trained with us for a whole semester and he put on an inch, 2 inches on his jump. And it's like, okay, there's got to be something better. And so when I was training the figure skating team in club sports, the girls would jump. So we would do a normal vertical jump with hands. And when the girls would jump, they would never extend their arms up to jump, because when they skate, they go to jump and then they just automatically put their hands in, like they put it across their chest to like spin and stuff. So they've never jumped in their life throwing their hands over their head. And so for like weeks, I was like, just throw your hands over your head, get as high as you can. And the girls would just they get their hands here and then they would put it back down. I said, okay, let's do hand on hip. Because I was measuring jumps, like 3 or 4 jumps a day at this point with the groups. And when they were using their hands, their jumps are all over the place. We jump for those girls, 18, 16, 19. It was all over the place. Did hand on hip, and like everything was within an inch or two on the jumps. I was like, okay, we might be on to something as far as just getting a jump that I can look at consistently. And so then next year comes about, I start to go, okay, let's try sitting, let's try standing. We start measuring the jumps that way. So and we start pausing. So we're going from a box, hand on hip, we're pausing, hand on hip, and then we're just doing a normal counter movement. Across the board, all three of those jumps got a lot better doing those three things. And now I should preface is like I changed some things in training, so that also helps. But so we go that year, and okay, jumps are looking pretty good. Okay, then we get to the new situation, or just a new facility and different teams. And so that's where I start going, okay, we're going to start using broad jump, and we're going to use a jump mat. Those three variations look pretty good, but I want to use more. And so that's where we started. Okay, we started doing dumbbell jumps and measuring those. We started doing the seated jumps. So vertical jump. We start with weighted seated dumbbell jumps. Then we're going seated hand on hip jump, and then we're going seated with hands. And so all of these jumps are going to work from slow to fast in terms of ground contact time, or however you want to look at it. You're going to look for more strength, force-based, or more speed-based, tendon-based, however you would like to look at it. So again, seated with dumbbells, seated hand on hip, and then seated normal hands. And then we take away the box. We're going standing, jumping, standing hand on hip, standing with hands. And then if we go past that, we're going a approach jump, something like that, or with bands or something. And so we did that. And then on broad jump, we did the same thing. We didn't do anything weighted. We just did seated hand on hip, seated with hands, standing hand on hip, and standing with hands. So it was a little, the cycles were a little off, but you get the point. And so the first fall that I did that, the broad jumps, I had kids improving a foot on a broad jump. And keep in mind, like, we're taking like 5 or 6 broad jumps every workout. So it's not like I took this random one and, now they're doing this one today. And so there's 2 factors to that. They're learning how to broad jump better. It's a form thing. They are learning how to do it better. But I don't care what anybody says. That's obviously going to give you some distance, but there's going to be a piece of I'm getting more explosive, because I've had kids, whether it's Liberty or Florida, put 18, 20 inches on a broad jump. And again, I'm taking like 5 in a day. So it's not just one where they started. And so, and like when we start, we're using, and when I say 18, 20 inches, I'm talking on their regular broad jump, not on the variations. Now on the variations, they're blowing up too, but on their actual broad jump. And like when we start the broad jump, I'm doing everything in my power when we're learning it. Like we'll go 3 weeks in a row of just regular broad jump when we start to get a baseline. So let's preface all of that. And I'm putting a band down of like, hey man, this is where you jumped, beat this mark. Like I'm trying to get the most I possibly can. And again, you're looking at 12, 15, 18, some 20 inches on the broads, doing all these variations. I'm like, okay, I think we're on something. Same thing on the vertical. Now, the interesting part, I think, on the verticals is that I was, and I still do, I don't have anything to measure verticals here, but in Florida, by measuring all the different variations, you see drastic improvements in the dumbbell jump, in the weighted jump over time. Like we had kids in Florida that over the fall semester put 6, 7 inches on a dumbbell jump. Now I'm pretty particular about the dumbbells too. Like the kids can't shrug, they can't throw the dumbbells up. Like it is, I'm a prick about it. And so like we're keeping that in a factor here. But you see that jump gets better. Now I want to see, okay, how much is this next jump and this next jump and this next jump as we go. But what I found is that their vertical jump is got way better overall. Now we're not talking 6, 7, 8 inches in my time. Now you got kids that are flirting with 6, and other ones not so much, but you're seeing 8, 9, 10 on these other variations. And so we're teaching different phases. We're seeing that they're more explosive with the weight. And ultimately, that's where I think the part about that conjugate jump system is that you're teaching kids how to jump. You're teaching form things. You know, when you're doing a seated jump and it's a hand on hip, and I love the hand on hip because you don't have to worry about your hands. There's no form issue. It goes back to the skaters. It's just purely leg drive. And you got some kids that are great at getting their hands involved. You got other ones that are terrible at it. Because you'll notice when kids jump, and I got this from Chris Corfus, talking to him about it, and he's got an article, I believe, on Simply Faster where he talks about this. When the kids go jump, you got some that'll leave the ground, but then their torso is still a little bent over. So they're not getting that whole vertical drive out because they didn't unload their torso at the same time. And so as you're doing the hand on hip jumps and you're doing all these variations, and we're doing this all the time, the kids learn to get fully extended, whether it's on a broad jump or whether it's on a vertical jump. Because on a broad jump, you got to get extended to then get the legs out. And it ultimately boils down to speed. Like, I got to just be violent with it. And the getting the full extension on the jump. And if I get the full extension with my hips, my vertical is going to be better. And then from there, it just becomes technique, and it becomes learning how to jump. As long as I'm improving the floor, now we can worry about technique, you know, on an approach jump and things of that nature. But no, those rotations just, again, I think they just teach the jump at the end of the day. That's really all they do. But it's also working the different speeds and the different kids' strengths. And you'll find, you know, you would look at the majority of your kids are going to be better at the seated vertical jump than they are the standing vertical jump because they got more time to put force in the ground. But your fast twitch kids are better at the standing than they are at the seated. And so, and you have some that are great at both, but nevertheless, you got the kids that you can start telling they're more slow twitch or whatever you want to say, you know, they're more fast twitch, and it lets you see the differences, and you already know who those kids are when they go. But nevertheless, teaching lets you categorize your kids, and ultimately it gets the kids competing every week. You know, it gives them a PR, gives them something to chase. And that's really ultimately what I wanted, is I just want something for them to PR in every week.
Now, going into that, I've had you on here quite a while, and I know you got a family to take care of and everything else. So if you want to, we'll hit this one rabbit hole. We'll see where we end up, and then we'll let you enjoy your evening.
Okay. I mean, hey, we're good. We're rolling.
Now talking about these jumps. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying this is a rabbit hole, but talking about these jumps and using your arms, do you find that when you read like Charlie Francis, his sprinters, he was big on building upper body to make the arms more powerful because he said it made them faster sprinters. You also get into like Bill Parisi, he will do a lot of upper body work because the fascia and lateral slings and all that play a part in the sprinting. Do you find if you develop the upper back, you get higher jumps?
You know, that's not something I've actually thought about, and that's not something I've looked at. I think so I've gone all in on dumbbell jumps. We vary the weight. Again, this is a Fahey and Goodman, those cats, like just talking to them, and haven't talked to Goodman, but talking to Fahey of waving dumbbell jumps and doing all that. I've got all in on it. And naturally, when you're going to get the upper back and the trap work, I think like you're saying in the arm drive, 100% a factor in terms of throwing the hands up, bringing them back down, all that kind of good stuff. I think the big thing with the kids is they get comfortable with, like you're saying, just launching their hands and launching them when they run, you know, and because we do essentially, conjugate jumping, whatever you want to call it. We do the same thing on sprinting, and it's from Corfus and those cats of 1 week we're going to do PVC overhead, 1 week we're going to do PVC on the shoulder, 1 week we're going to do PVC on the hips, and we're still going to do a regular sprint during that week. And talking about getting rid of the arm drive and using the arm drive, I think what all those movements obviously do naturally is you're teaching the right positions, but I think the kids realize how important arm drive is and how different, or how important it is in the fact that I need you to throw your hands. I need you to drive your elbows when you sprint, you know, these type of things. But it's not something I've been like, man, as that upper back's gotten better, our kids are jumping higher. That's a great thought to have. But no, it's not something I've specifically looked at, but it is a great point.
Now, this one might get you in trouble with some Olympic lifters, so be careful how you answer it. But let's say you do dumbbell box jumps. Are you doing a movement more explosive than a clean?
So I'm not against Olympic lifting whatsoever. We do different variations. I think and it's the great argument of, do you want something that the kids can do right now, or do you want something that they can, long term do it? Being around, with Coach Gillespie, they're cleaning every day. They're doing a clean every single day, and got great at cleaning, and been in other places where didn't clean at all. And we've done a variety of things. I think from a high school perspective, I think from a sheer time perspective, that, and I know everybody wants to talk about long-term athletic development and taking their time, and so you should teach the clean because it's going to take them longer to get it. And wholeheartedly agree. Heck yeah, like if your kids can pick up on it, heck yeah, man, let's do it. Like, let's go. But there's certain kids of like, Johnny might not be able to do past a bar for a year, and he could have been doing dumbbell box jumps or any dumbbell jump pretty quick. And I think there's something to be said about having a movement that everybody can do, so you feel like you're part of the group. Like you're training just like what my top guy in the program is and the bottom guy in the program. We're all doing the same stuff, versus dividing them out. Hey, this is my Olympic group, this is my non-Olympic group. Now it's, well, I want to go do cleans. And in Florida, there was a period of time where I had kids that wanted to clean. They wanted to hang clean. I'm like, okay, sure. We'll teach you and we'll do it. And I gave them the choice every day of hang clean or trapdoor jumps. And some days they'd hang clean, some days they trapdoor jump. We do it with sprinting. It was good either way. Like we're still training. I don't think I'm not too concerned about the speed per se, but I think because I like doing variations. I'll do Olympic lifting one day a week, just to do it, and just because I like doing it. But from the variations that we use, we've started doing some hip high pulls that I got from Brandon Davis, just talking to him about it a little bit. Started doing hip high pulls. We've got jammer arms, so we do some jammer arm stuff. The dumbbell jumps, the trap bar jumps, all that kind of stuff, man. I think it's good either way. And I think it just truly, when I think about training, I think about what can I teach to 120 kids. That's a long-winded answer of, we can all do dumbbell jumps. I've got 1,000 different dumbbell jumps or dumbbells to use and I got girls that weigh 80 pounds but I have no girls bars. So like, are they going to use a 50% of their body weight to learn this hang clean? Or are they going to go from a PVC pipe to whatever? I think and it's a different conversation. I think that in my situation, let's say I want to really get the Olympics going. If I wanted to do that, I'd start at the kids in 7th and 8th grade. And then now when they get up there, now we can start going with it because the kids can just go. At this point, I just have to get these kids to learn how to train and giving them things that we can all do, because I'm definitely seeing with our kids right now that if I give them things that are different than what the main group is doing, sometimes they're like, I don't want to do this because nobody else is doing it. Or it's like, hey, thank you for adjusting for what I need. It just really depends. But I didn't answer your question, and I kind of did, but I don't think it makes a difference. I really don't. It just boils down to logistics, number one. And I think you'd have to ask the question, if you had to pick one movement, what's it going to be? And if you're going to pick, if I could only do this with my kids, what's it going to be? I'd probably say that Olympic lifting, if I had to pick between Olympic lifting and a dumbbell jump, but I got 50 other things I can do to check the boxes from the clean. And again, I ranted there and I didn't really answer much, but
that's probably the best way to keep it. And then you don't have to answer for whatever you said. You're just like, well, I didn't really say anything. No, I've been thinking about that a little while. We don't do a whole lot of cleaning out here, but I know that I can dumbbell jump them and get a really good response, especially if the weight's right. You're getting 2 meters per second. Well, you know,
right.
How fast can you get a clean?
Right. And I think like, I would rather teach our kids how to snatch personally. I would rather teach our kids how to snatch. And I did not feel that way for a very long time until I forced myself to be better at a snatch. And it didn't take me nearly as long to get better at a snatch than a clean, you know.
I've been watching some snatches compared to some cleans, and what I think I see, and I may be seeing it totally wrong, but what I think I see is the eccentric break is harder in the snatch than it is the clean. You can't coast in a snatch. You'd better get stopped.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's going to pile drive you. So I think from that sense, a snatch might be better.
Yeah. And I think you can't, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with RDLs and stuff, upper back development. Now a clean is obviously going to develop that, but the snatch, I've got to get the shoulder. Obviously I got to get the shoulders overhead. I got to catch it, all that kind of good stuff. But I think from when you're looking at the combination of bar speed and the number of factors to, hey, just take this from your hip or from the box. I'm not going from the floor. We're doing a hang or from a super high box, and you just got to pop your hips. You got to get up underneath it. So it's not heavy. It's not heavy at all. It might be 65 pounds, you know, or at the top end, it might be 95 pounds for these kids for the bar speed, because the big thing from Coach Gillespie that you're taking away, that I've taken away, and the majority of coaches are going to realize this. It's coaches that haven't learned anything over the years, is that your Olympic lifts have to be way lighter than what you think. Like you're looking at 50, 60, 70%, you know, you might go to 80 if you're feeling frisky, but I mean, the majority of those reps, man, are going to be 60, 70% or lighter, way lighter. And that's where you're going to get your true dynamic work from it. And that's also, again, where I love, if I'm going to use something, it's going to be a snatch. It's going to be a hang snatch from a box or from the hips, because most kids haven't done it. They don't have a conception of what a good snatch is, which I'm a huge fan of using movements that kids don't know what a good number is, because then we're not starting out of, hey, I saw this dude on Instagram squatting 600 pounds. That's what I'm going to hit today, you know, or what, you know, whatever it is, you know, they are not following stuff that's some dude hitting hang snatches from boxes or whatever. And they don't know what a good number is. And so stuff like that. And that's why I love using the safety bars, because the kids don't have any idea what a good safety bar squat is, or the box. Like, none of these kids have used, that I know of, they had not box squatted before I got here. And I've gone all in on the box squatting since coming here. And it's been unreal on acceleration for our kids. Our 5 to 15 yard sprint, so a 5-yard lead to a 10-yard fly, has been unreal. How much better that has gotten, because before me there was no strength coach. It was the coaches doing their own program, and so they, you know, normal, you know, bench squat, all deadlift, all that stuff, doing a bunch of back squatting. And so we've only done a true cycle of back squat one time. All the rest has either been a front squat, safety bar squat. That's pretty much it. And we have done a cycle of back box squat. Again, I'm not against it, but it's just how it's kind of panned out over the time. But it's because our kids hadn't done heavy front squats, and so their upper backs were trash, and they couldn't get in a front position at all. And it's like, dude, I don't care what your back squat is. If you can't at least do this, then I don't care. And, you know, it's funny when you get the kids, they'll always ask, when are we going to squat? They'll ask me every once in a while. I'm like, we do squats every week. We do them every day. And it's like, well, no. When are we going to normal squat? Like, we also do a normal squat every day. No, back squat. Like, we have done it, and we're gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it when I know that all your upper back and your low back is prepped for you. I can take you out to a heavy back squat, and you're gonna do great. And again, I only have that lens because it's I have 100 and some odd kids at once. Now, if I'm in a room of 20, I got a different, I'm going to throw it in way more because I can just watch, you know what I mean? And again, it goes back to coaches coaching, me coaching, and the safety bar squat. The kids are always talking about how hard it is because of the upper back. And it ties back into the snatch. You're going to build the upper back, going to build the shoulders, that mobility piece, get the lats and the T-spine, all that kind of good stuff, man. And we've done the jammer snatch. You know, kids love ripping that thing up there. It's it's just go. They can't mess it up. And so, they're getting a feel for that and the catch, and they got to pause it and catch it. So they're getting a little bit of that there. We're doing the high pull now. There's going to be a time where I'm like, okay, they're smoking the snatch high pull. Like, okay, let's just go ahead and flip it over and we'll see how it goes. But nevertheless, there we are. I don't even remember what the original question was, Coach.
That's all right. We got off on some side stuff, but that's fine. You kind of hit on it there. Instagram has made a coach's job incredibly hard, because what numbers we know are good numbers, now these kids scoff at. They're like, well, I seen a guy on Instagram. Well, maybe you did, but that's not what you're hitting. What you're hitting is amazing, but you're not hitting that.
Yeah. And the kids are learning, you know what I mean? They're learning, and it's, as we go here, they're starting to see what a good safety bar back squat is. Like, they're starting to learn what that is. You got dudes like a couple of baseball guys, before we left for winter break, a couple of them ripped out like 315 plus for 6 on the box, which was great. I'll take that all day. I'll take that all day long. And so, like, they're starting to see it and slowly build up to it. And the thing that, and this isn't what we were talking about, but I'm thinking about it as I've personally added in my own training, the box squat, and with our kids, but I know I can speak for me because I know for a fact what my numbers are. As I've gone all in on the box squat in my training, my deadlift has gotten way better, like drastically better. And particularly trap bar, for whatever reason. The straight bar, it's gone up a little bit, but like my trap bar has shot up for whatever reason. And so with the box and obviously we're talking, they're both from static starts, so that's obviously going to transfer to the deadlift. But as I've seen that go, it's like, okay, like because we now, like during the week here, for example, we're going to heavy box squat one day typically. And then the other day is going to be either the deadlift hinge type of day, or it's going to be a unilateral squat day. It just depends on what it is, what the emphasis is. So like Monday for us, or day one for us, if it's a 2-day training week, which I see a ton of teams for just 2 days, which is unfortunate. And I see a lot of them for 30 minutes on that day. And so, it's going to be a squat, a box squat, and it's going to be a bench. And then we're going to do some, accessories and jumping and whatever. And then the second day is going to be the deadlift or a unilateral squat of some kind with a hinge accessory, or it's going to be the hinge, an RDL main with a accessory single leg squat. So we're hitting everything. We're doing all the stuff during the week. We're doing all of it. And so, I don't want people to think that like, okay, I'm only going to box squat and that's all we're going to freaking do. No, like I just rolled out last week for football. We're doing split squats with the safety bar. They're not doing Hatfield style. They're not holding on to anything at this point. For the time being though, we're just doing the safety bar. They're holding on, they're holding the bar and they're going, normal split squats, and that jacked them up. They'd never done that for weight. And so, they were feeling that one pretty good. But as that one gets better, and as we progress to the Hatfield version of that, and I told him this, I was like, look, the split squat at Hatfield style, and I just said, you're going to hold on to the racks. This is going to be your best squat. It's going to be your highest one. We don't, and I'm not doing like a Hatfield regular, bilateral Hatfield squat. Those are great. I'm not against them. I just don't use them. I'd rather use it on the split personally. And so, those kids are going to be repping out what they do on the bilateral back for the split. And that's the day when the kids, I think there's going to be a light bulb of like, oh, okay, like Coach Garner's not that stupid. And, there was a plan. And even though some of the kids are bigger than me, it's like, man, I got you. Just give me a second. Like, it's been 6 months. give it a minute.
Well, Coach, I know you got other things going on. I appreciate your time. I know we could talk about this stuff another hour or more, but to take some time and come on here, I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much, and hopefully there's something to take away. And obviously, if anybody needs, if I can help anybody, feel free to reach out. If you got questions, I can always talk shop. There's a reason why we, me and Chris and Blair started our podcast just solely as an excuse to say, hey, you want to have a conversation. Like, I talked with Joe Stakowski earlier today, and that was a great conversation. It's like, man, I just need an excuse to talk to somebody and have a reason to ask questions. And at the same time, you get to, let people have their platform and talk about what you want. And I think something, and I think you do a good job of this, Coach, is you get a lot of people that, like, I've never heard of, I've never seen. And so I'm learning from these cats. You got the people that everybody knows, and you get to go through those lists. And obviously you want to hear from those guys. But I think, a good rule of thumb that I like is I like to talk to people that are doing weird things or doing special things in weird places, in places that should not be successful. And like, I think of Brad Dixon. I've never talked to Brad once in my life. I don't know him at all. But I know he's in the middle of nowhere on a small football team, and they just won a state championship doing something completely opposite of what the majority of football coaches do. That's the type of stuff where, what's he doing that's working at a place that, like, kids aren't moving to? You're not getting talent coming in. It's not like I'm here in Fort Worth. You got people that move here all the time. You got some talent fluctuating in and out. What are these places doing? What are these coaches doing that's different? You think of Chris Corfus, think of those guys. They were successful at schools that shouldn't have been successful. Tony Holler, those cats. Like that, those are the coaches that I want to talk to and I want to learn from. And that's like talking to Joe. Like, now he's at Grayson, so he's at a powerhouse, but he's been all over. He's been in Illinois and he's been at smaller places in Georgia, but like, he's been producing guys and he's got great information. Like, those are the guys that I want to talk to and that I want to give a platform to let them speak their ideas, because eventually they're going to find the right spot. Now, they might stay and they love where they're at, and that's great, but you want to give those guys an opportunity and learn from them, because they're clearly, doing something right.
Yeah. They're winning, and their kids love them. So
yep.
Why not? There's so many guys out there that are winning, but maybe not doing it in a way that we could learn from.
Yeah. Well, and I think, man, and not to cut you off, Coach, I think that's the huge thing about us at the high school level. And when you're working with the youth, is like, there's a balance between, you want to hold the standard and you want to push these kids, you want to teach them these lessons and whatnot. But at the same token, the kids want to enjoy what they're doing, and winning helps. And if you're not winning, it's really hard to get them to the other side. And you've got to have a nice balance. And I think the guys, again, like Holler and those cats, they do a good job of that. And there's plenty of coaches that do that out there.
Yeah, it's just finding them, getting connections, getting set up to do the podcast. And when we started this, it was never about money, never about views. Now, you obviously get caught up in that sometimes, and I got to step back and be like, that's not why I'm doing this, and then regroup and move forward. But yeah, some of the coaches I've been able to talk to, it's just been unbelievable for me personally, because it's changed my outlook on how I view things.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, it's been and I pull from different people, and you kind of develop your system and what really works, and it's always changing. It's always changing, and that's the cool thing about what we do. We get to see what works, what doesn't, and you're learning from all these people. And like I was saying earlier, like, I've never done a 6-week straight block of aerobic. I haven't done it, but I'm going to do it now, and it's only because I've been in these 3 different states, and it's like I'm seeing this, and it keeps happening, and so we're going to try it, and we're going to see how it goes, and I think it'll be just fine.
Well, Coach, I hope you have a wonderful evening. We'll have to sit down and do this again, and we'll hit on some stuff we missed.
That sounds good. Appreciate it, Coach.